What if I told you that brands in the Philippines, such as Ferrari, Maserati, Land Rover, Jaguar, Aston Martin, Bose, and many more, that their initial investment can be traced back to a man with 50 Philippine pesos? That's less than $1 in today's currency. Well, today's guest on Driven, the road to peak performance, is a man whose story started 65 years ago, and he's still going strong. And that story is filled with ups, downs, and a lot of twists. Welcome to another episode of Driven, the road to peak performance, with our guest, none other than Tito, Willy Soong.
Good evening.
So 65 years, you've been doing this for a very, very long time. What keeps you driven to keep on doing this all these years?
Well, one is I think it's part of my life. And if I'm not active, I think I will deteriorate. I'll intellectually atrophy. And so today, looking back, it's nothing but grateful appreciation of where I am today from what I've learned. And I won't say I'm retired, but on the other hand, I'm able to choose my engagements.
Sure.
And engagements that are challenging, fulfilling different from rewarding, you see. The fulfillment is being able to accomplish something that's different from the ordinary and to be able to provide the benefits to clients, to customers, to the market downstream.
Is that your, I guess, is that your description of what success would be?
Yes, success for me, well, the traditional measure of success is how much money you have in the bank, you know.
How would you measure it?
Measurement, for me, success is what you have achieved and what are the efforts that you had to put in. Efforts in terms of sacrifices, hard work, diligence, and overcoming the challenges and obstacles, because it's not one clear path. And once you have been able to navigate through all of these challenging difficulties, hurdles, could be even political in terms of the business politics, you know, overcoming competition, and then you finally win an award. That's achievement. That's success. So it's not an overnight thing that you win. So you invest all the time because you believe in it, and then you're rewarded with this achievement, and that's your success. And there are many times we have failed. And every time we fail, I always call it a post-mortem. We analyze why we failed, how did we lose out, to learn from it and make us stronger and more focused for the next round.
So, Tito, they say that a person who has a big enough why can go through anyhow. What would you say is your biggest why?
I think, and it's not driven by financial reasons, okay? Two things. I have to believe in the purpose, in the product, in the endeavor. I have to believe in it. And part of the belief and conviction is that the other side of the party will benefit from it equally. So it's everybody's happy, okay? It's not I winning and at the expense of others. I'll never agree to that, you see. So for me, it's pursuing something we believe, and I always tell clients that when we sell something to you, we're not a vendor. We're a partner in your fulfilling your own purpose. So when we sell, like when we were selling cars, we sold cars because it was fulfilling your purpose. We're your partner to fulfill that dream, to find a transport, a sports car. When we were selling speakers, okay, we're your partner to fulfill that purpose, that you now have found a speaker that gives you the music, you see. And all our contractual obligations, engagements have always been that way. It's not a transactional relationship. And through the years, that's where I coined the phrase. One evening, I was in the showroom at 9:30, and I just came to my mind and says, when we close a sale, it is not the end of a transaction. Instead, it signals the start of a long-term relationship.
And that's
And that's been my
Customer
mantra.
excellence, yeah.
Yes, and that's been my mantra. I've received endless compliments for that. Friends copy it. And as I always say, the highest form of compliment is when they copy you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm never offended.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's something that I would use too. But there is something that a story that I heard that a gentleman came to your showroom. He wanted to buy a sports car from you to give to his son, and you actually discouraged this. You actually said that it's not. It may have some negative effects
Yes.
for the son.
It actually happened in this showroom. A man came in, maybe early 50s, and he was with 2 or 3 other people who walked around, and he chose one of our sports cars, And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Wow, this is beautiful. It's perfect for you, Then he said, no, it's not for me." I said, "Wait." I said, "For whom are you buying this?" "Pare, I'm buying this for my son." "Oh, yeah. But my son is such a good student. He's 19 years old. He's very high grades. And I want to give him this car as a gift to him in appreciation of his diligence in school." And then he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Sir, we're both parents, Of course, I'd like to sell a car, but can I share something with you?" He said, "What?" "Your son is 19, and he's, oh, yes, it's very good. He's very studious and all." I said, "Do you realize when you give him a car like this, it's like giving him a demon,
Yeah.
Because all his friends and friends that will just go to him because of his car, will really drive things out of proportion and baka masirang buhay niyan."
Yeah.
He looked at me. Hindi ko naisip yun I said, "I'd love to sell you a car, don't get me wrong, but mabigat sa konsyensya ko kung masirang buhay ng batang yan. Alam mo, napakabait ng anak kong yan I said, "That's exactly
Wow.
And he's so innocent at that age, and he'll be, we were 19 years old once, I told him.
Yeah.
Pagka kaibigan mo may kotse, may chikot, talagang. And this is where I am.
Yeah.
I held my arm, pare, says, bakang kausap. I said, "No,
Wow.
you buy the car, you give it, kung masirang buhay nun, mabigat sa konsyensya, buhay ang sinisira natin."
So declining a sale, no?
Yes, and he walked away with it with so much gratitude.
Yeah.
What is your thinking behind that?
I need a sale, but it's not that desperate that it will compromise the foundation of principles and values of other people's lives.
Yeah.
You give a 19-year-old kid a sports car, it's just going to go wild.
Yeah.
You see?
There's a very strong possibility that could happen.
Yes. We're human. We were 19 years old once, you see?
Yeah.
So and that tempered it, and I look back and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and the reason why that story stood out to me is because I actually have a personal experience with one of your sons, Mark. He was selling this car. It was a Defender. It was the small Defenders. And I actually inquired. I asked him, "Hey, I'd like to purchase that car. I'll sell mine and I'll buy that." He actually discouraged me from buying it. He did not want that sale from a friend because he said, if you're going to use it as a daily drive, it may not be the car for you. So there was something there between declining what you did back then to that gentleman. It's very similar to what your son also.
So it's
did
repeating itself
it's repeating.
in another
Yeah.
in another version or in another aspect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were really able to pass on that value of when
Without realizing it, that we all grew up under the same perception of values in life. It's not all about money. You see.
So you started as young as how old when you were managing your parents' fleet of taxis?
17 years old.
17 years old. You talk
June
about
1st.
Wow. So Tito actually has a
there's-
certificate here.
Yeah, we want to show
commemorate
this. The
65th
65 years.
65th anniversary last June 1.
Yeah.
You talked about sense of responsibility. How would you define your sense of responsibility back then? We were once 17 years old, but not everyone had that sense of responsibility at 17.
Yeah, in that regard, I feel it was providential, you know, to be presented with that set of circumstances. And my parents, you know, they were both working, and they were trying to get into this mold. And the taxi business was a nightmare. We never got out of debt, you know, because, and that's the time when I talked to my parents, we have to give it up. Because I said, and my mother said, why? And I said, you know, because part of the rationale was it's a cash business.
Yeah.
I said, but you know, Mom, under the most extreme and real conditions, on the premise that you have the best car, what's the definition of it? It doesn't break down. Very, very economical in fuel. You have the best driver. He doesn't get sick. He drives the car very well, hardworking. You have the best mechanic. He just looks at the car, he'll tell you what's wrong. Okay? So you have the perfect car. He drives out. And then all it needs is when you reach a junction, a gravel and sand truck comes in and rams into the car, and the whole car's a total wreck. We don't stand a chance. They're going to go to court. Let's give it up. And they agreed. And so what we did was, with the car suppliers, because we were buying it on a lease program, I talked to them and I said, we're exiting from the business and we still owe you money, and we would prefer to volunteer to return the cars than to go on a hide and seek game. And they appreciated that. So we agreed on one day, and on a Friday they came in, we surrendered all the cars, closed all the debts. And then a new chapter in my life started.
Which was that? What chapter?
That was in 1970, after 10 years, and I started selling piped-in music, and I was starting to dabble with Bose in 1968. But you know, I had only 50 pesos to print my first letterhead.
That's right.
You see, and I was with a friend of mine who owned the printing press, and the first client I had had no office. It was in my car. I had a Smith Corona portable typewriter. Type out a proposal, go see the client. And the first contract I got was 16,000 pesos.
Which was a lot back then.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
that was for the La Tondena building in Etiague. And the client then, the manager said, you know, Willy, since this is your first contract, we cannot give you 50% down. The board says, if you don't mind, we'll just give you 25%, which is 4,000. I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was the first time I would get my hands on the amount of 4,000. That was life and death for me.
Yeah.
And
So most people would go into corporate first, employment, and then start business later on. For you, it was the other way around.
yes, when I was in college, and then the turning point was during the taxi business. My mother talked to me. She said, you know, son, we know you want to become a doctor, and we're committed to support you until you become a doctor. On the other hand, if you decide to go into business, there's a business to start with already, and you can help us. So part of my assessment then was, medicine was a 7-year course. You take 1 year for the review, board exams. After 8 years, you go into residency for 5 years. So that's 13 years. And then it takes another 5 years to establish a practice. And I said, I cannot be in limbo for 18 years.
Yeah.
And then internally I said, okay, since I'm getting out of medical school, I'll just finish with a business degree in UP. And then I said, I will start on my own and give myself until the age of 35. If at the age of 35, I still do not know where I am and what I'm going to do, that's when I will seek employment. And that was the breakthrough.
You mentioned something about soul searching. If you have being an entrepreneur within you, how would one know if I'm meant to be an entrepreneur or not?
You know, the way I look at it, it's a matter of instinct. It has to be in you. I cannot force you to become an artist, to be a painter. I cannot force you to become a musician. You have to love to sing. You have to love to play music, you know. And I think that's wherein you internalize with yourself what you want to do.
And to be an entrepreneur, what should you love?
Again, to make it clear, it should not be money, okay? It has to be, for me personally, I always pursue something that is leading edge, ahead of the game. So there are challenges, but it's always new frontiers. And when you're able to be successful in that landscape, it's very rewarding. It's fulfilling, you know. We started out in 1978, modular office furniture systems, and nobody at the time, they said, nobody, open plant, you're crazy. And I said, no. And then we had the oil crisis. Everybody now today's landscape, it's all open workspaces.
Yeah.
See, and that was 78, and I enjoyed that journey too. See,
So it sounds like there's foresight on what's up and coming.
yes, but I have to also. There's an element of instinct and destiny. Okay, instinct on where your gut feel. I've never gone into any business that says, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to build hotels, one day no. That's not within my purview and my capacity. I'll not say someday I'm going to own shopping centers. I don't know. No, it's because I have very modest resources, so I just bite within my capabilities. I don't bite more than I can digest. And so we moved, we grew bits and pieces. With Bose, we started, and we were so established that we became the foremost contractor to set up the sound reinforcement systems for all the concerts in the Philippines. From 1970 to 86, the Jackson 5, Dionne Warwick, Donna Summer. I personally set up the sound system. And it was not even digital, so everything was wired. I'd go in backstage, the left was bass, right was treble, you know, and it's all visuals. Microphones were marked with yellow tags. So yellow tags is Jinno's microphone, red tag is Sheila. So we could modulate and I'd give signals. But it was baptism by fire. We did the concerts for Ike and Tina Turner, the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees, you know, and Donna Summer live, and I'll never forget her piece. Fantastic, you know, and then Sammy Davis Jr. He was an amazing tap dancer, and he had the technique. This was in Manila Hotel. He had a concert together with Burt Bacharach. So he'd do his tap dance, and to pick up the noise of the tap dance, he hung the microphone on his. That was hanging on the heels, so you know. And then Donna Summer with her signature song, "I Feel Love." It was unbelievable. It brought the house down.
Yeah, that love for that music and sound, I see where your son Jason gets that from. No wonder, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense.
But I was also always at the front end.
Yeah.
And how we got the Altec Lansing brand, which was the major sound loudspeaker They were famous for their voice of the theater. I was in San Francisco, I flew to Los Angeles, I went to the factory, I met the head of international, Roger Faust, introduced myself. He says, yes, we've heard of you. They heard of my efforts. There was no email in those days, so he walked me around, toured the factory, and then he says, do you like our products? Yes, and then I'd love to distribute it. I says, you got it.
Yeah.
So he signed off an appointment paper right there.
You know what gave you that, should I say, maybe courage to want to distribute this big brand in the Philippines, which was unheard of at that time?
There is a psychic element there.
Oh, please teach us this psychic element.
And the psychic thing is, it's just a gut feel that you believe you can make something out of it. And it's going to make a difference. You know? And we were the ones, with due respect, that brought the level of pro audio to the level it is today.
Yeah.
We were the pioneers. You know, and all the live concerts, Don, McLean, I enjoyed all of that, you know, and that was my trademark. We did the Miss Universe in the folk arts in 1974, and then it was time to move on. Okay, so it was increasingly opportunistic, seeing so many developments that I got involved with providing the central bank with what was then known as building automation system. That's smart technology for buildings. And that was in 1972, 74. And then I, through the efforts with architect Lindy Locsin, Governor Licaros, and then Aber Canlas and Mrs. Marcos, they all wanted me to do it. And that's where I did the PICC,
Okay.
Oh, wow.
which was to be held in time for the IMF World Bank. You were not even born then. That was in 1974, and then it was opened in 1976. I flew all the way to Washington to meet with the IMF people because we had to introduce what was then called the language translation system. It's wireless. It's now, they call it SI, Simultaneous Interpretation System. And you have capabilities of up to 6 languages, you know. So interpreters and all. And it was a learning curve. And I'm not even an engineer, I was a medical student. But we just broke all frontiers with our technology. And next year, 2026, PICC will be celebrating its 50th year.
That's right.
So, Tito, we want to learn from peak performers like you how to be one. And I'm wondering how you could have that courage of, I don't know how much money needed to be spent on that, and not even think, it seems like you're not even thinking about the risk. You're just thinking of how I can make this big. What's happening in your mind as you think about that?
The most fundamental factor is believing in a product and believing what it will deliver. Because I cannot sell anything that I don't believe in. And that's where I put my reputation to it.
And my guess is you also believe in your abilities to make something work, right?
We believe in the technology, we believe in the product, and we believe that we will learn how to make it work.
Yeah.
And of course, the process of learning is you don't do it all by yourself.
Right.
You bring in technicians, the technical people, the engineers. And so it becomes a team effort. And that's how Electrosystems was born in 1972. It's 53 years old today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to punctuate that, what Tito Willy said, that the believing that we have the ability to learn, it's in psychology, we call it self-efficacy. It's, I don't know how to do it, but I'll figure it out.
Yes.
And I guess that's the one thing that you really had in you.
To figure it out, you must have the innate interest and commitment.
Right.
You're not going to back out midstream unless there is a fatal discrepancy. Okay, you can also manage to find out midway that, oops, it's just not going to work. And if it's not going to work, you have to give up. You have to accept that. You cannot proceed by selling something that is fake. You see, so we always deal with that.
Yeah.
And that's where you internalize, and integrity is the most important. Integrity to yourself, with your people, with your transactional commitments. You cannot sell something on the premise of somebody, on the premise of misleading somebody, because that's the end of your relationship.
You talked about integrity with self. Say more about that. What do you mean when you say that?
Integrity
With self.
with yourself, that you're not cheating anyone. You see, in fact, this is just happening right now. Last night, I saw on my phone a message from a friend that was sent to me October last year that I never read.
Wow.
She says, Willy, can you help me? I have a Bose speaker. And then my son-in-law sent it to them. And they said it's out of warranty. Maybe you can look into it. So I apologize. Tomorrow she's sending the speaker to me. I mean, what is that to repair something?
Yeah.
It's goodwill.
Yeah. Yeah.
And goodwill has no price, and goodwill will always bring it back. You see.
So you talked about your parents earlier, and I'm wondering if there's one thing that you learned from your parents that really guided you all through these years, what would that be?
Well, my father always said, when I was going to college and, I was switching now from medicine, and he said, you're planning to do this? I said, yeah. And I says, you know what? He says, I'll not tell you what to go into, but whatever you get into, you better be the best.
Wow.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, he didn't say you have to be the richest.
Yeah.
But he says you better be the best in your field. If you want to be a janitor, you better be the best. I said, okay,
What
Dad.
effect did that have on you?
Oh, that's always been my standard. Whatever I get into, I will have to excel. Like even when I launched Racks,
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
even a chef.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but that storyline is something super interesting because for the longest time, I thought Rax was an international brand that was brought to the Philippines, but you're the one who actually created that.
Yes. And Rack stood for Real American Country Kitchen Style, a Southern recipe. So I brought in that, and then the design of, even the stores, I designed them all myself. Even this office, I designed it. I love dealing with space, you see. And what I wanted was you enjoy the outdoors with the comfort of the indoors. That's why I had this picket fence in our original stores, because it's something that is, because it's all about barbecue and roasted things. So you have that. It's an image that stands out by itself.
And I was reading about your story about how you came about with creating Racks. Is that initially you wanted to bring in McDonald's,
Yes.
and then you wanted to bring in Haagen-Dazs, and then to no avail. It just wouldn't work.
Yes.
And a lot of people, myself included, would have just given up. Like, it's just not working. I better just work somewhere. How did you come up with the idea that I'll just put up my own restaurant?
Well, it says if it doesn't work, then I have to do it myself. And actually, I even actually secured the Popeyes franchise.
Oh.
And after 6 months of negotiation, I got the franchise for the all of Asia.
All of
wow.
Asia
All of
for
Asia.
Popeyes.
For Popeyes.
Okay.
That was in, I think, 1989 or 1988. I met with Al Coplan, signed everything, and then one day Terry Roton says, Wellington, he says, I have to update you about some changes. I said, what changes? He says, we just acquired Church's fried chicken, and we don't have an international division. Church's has an international head, and he just sent a memo. He's taking over all the international operations of Popeyes. I said, what does that mean? Well, he now calls the shots.
Yeah.
I said, what about Aragon? Doesn't mean anything. I said, Terry, he can go to hell. I'm not going to go back to square one. I'm not going to deal with the politics. I can afford to walk away from it.
Yeah.
And I walked away from it.
And how did you get the idea of creating your own?
And so I was saying, you have burgers and Popeyes, and then I had Haagen-Dazs. But Dr. Matus at the time, Haagen-Dazs is not even a Swedish word.
It's not?
It's not. It doesn't mean anything. He put the word together and they put the map of Sweden. He told that to me. And he's a man from Brooklyn, but I will never forget one thing. He says, Wellington, he says, you know what's the greatest value of an ice cream? It's the cheapest treat a person can give himself. It's the cheapest treat personally. You treat yourself with an ice cream. So he liked it, so we came. But he was of the presumption that, like in the United States, you have tolling companies, you just give them the formula and they produce it for you. We had no fresh milk in this country. So if we wanted to pursue with the project, it had to be shipped out in reefer vans, frozen goods, offloaded, put onto refrigerated delivery vans into cold storage. Cold storage to
It's a
the
big
store.
process.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. And that's when you have to give up.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to walk away from it. You see? And
So if it's too much.
it just doesn't make economical sense. The operational nightmare is just too complicated because you have so many factors in the chain of in the chain of activities, and that's where we are. In fact, that's where the problem with racks became. I started with 50,000 pesos, a concept. It changed the whole dining landscape when we launched it in 1993. Everybody said there was no product, no dining concept that was launched that was so revolutionary, changed the landscape of dining, and everybody thought it was a foreign brand.
Because it came in around the same time as Fridays and all these other international brands started coming to
Yes.
the Philippines.
Yes.
And I honestly thought that Rax was one of those international brands.
And of course, it was very flattering for me that I was that successful in creating that image, I didn't want to look imported. There was no intent, but it
Gave that
came
impression.
across that this is an international brand.
Yeah.
And we opened up to 35 stores. We reached a peak that we were buying 2,000 kilos of pork every day.
Oh, wow.
2 tons
Wow.
every day.
Wow.
And but in the whole process, then you have operational issues, then quality controls, negligence. I always had an operating battle cry with the staff. We called it SPQ. That was our battle cry, SPQ. And so what is it? It's service and product quality.
Yeah.
That was the mantra in every store. You said, SPQ, mandate that to your whole staff from the kitchen and everyone. SPQ, service and product quality.
And you guys hosted the Miss Universe at that point in one of the racks.
Yes, 1994, 20 years later, I had this unforgettable
I'm
privilege
sure.
to host. And when you look back, that's 1994, that was 20 years. All these beauties are already in their 50s. They were 19, 21, 22. That's 25 years ago, And that's how fast time flies,
Yeah.
you see.
Really, cars, especially of the more executive style cars, the luxury cars. Those are what really come to mind. How did this all come about? I mean, your name is connected with massive brands.
Yeah. Again, that's it's a collective summary of so many influences in my life. Okay, the 10 years I was in the transportation business, gave me a very solid foundation of mechanical. I used to make my own batteries, diagnostics from generators to alternators, what starters, transmissions. So that was every day. I was dealing with that every day. And that also was the foundation for my fascination for cars. But I never could afford a car, you see. And so we got out of it in the 70s. And then through the years, you know, we were a family that was never buying brand new cars. We just always bought secondhand. And then in 1993, we launched racks. And actually, this is a story that I'll share with you. We were on such a high crescendo, electro systems, and then 97, I launched Jaguar. That because I loved cars, I didn't want to get involved with just ordinary brands, because I specialized in always relationships, and that every transaction is a relationship. So Jaguar was the first brand that came to my mind, and this is where I call its destiny. I was coming in from Europe, passing Hong Kong, and one of my business associates told me, he says, Willy, you're stopping by in Hong Kong. This was in 95. I said, yes. He says, have you been to Pacific Place? Because we were involved in realty also at the time. And I said, no, I've never heard of it. Pare, you got to go. That's the development now. There are 3 hotels, the Sheraton and all. I'm sure you know the Pacific Place today.
Yeah.
It was just open and you got to see it, you know. So I went, walked around, and on the mezzanine, I saw a Jaguar. So, oh my gosh, and I had my camera, I was taking pictures. And then the salesman said, was giving me the brochure. I said, why is the car here? He says, tomorrow we're launching. It's a big event here in the Pacific Place. That was the event place. Oh, they said, you want? I said, no, I'm just passing through. So Saturday night, Friday night, and went back to my hotel. And that incident was nagging me. Why is this happening? Is it telling me something? And I said, I think it is. Okay, so I woke up Saturday morning, came back to Manila, and I worked on it. Okay, how did I work on it? I said, where do I start? I like the brand. I really like the brand. So, and in fact, I bought a Jaguar in 1987 in San Francisco. So I really like the car. So I reached out to friends I had in London, and they checked and they said, oh, Willy, there's a person in Southeast Asia that is in charge for Jaguar distribution. This is his name. And that was given to me early December of 1995. And I said, okay. I decided it's Christmas time, let it go. And then waited for Chinese New Year to pass Singapore. So 1 week after Chinese New Year, I called up this man, Steve Watts, who's still a friend today.
Yeah.
I said, Steve Watts, I'm Wellington Soong. He said, how can I help you? I said, I was just curious to find out, do you have any distribution plans for the Philippines, you know? Because, he says, your call is perfect timing. I said, what do you mean? He said, I just got the instructions today from International Division that they have to look into the Philippines. He said, if you had called me last week, I said, no, it's not. Oh, really? Yeah. He says, I can send you the paper. I said, Steve, if you don't mind, I can fly into Singapore. Why? Because I've always believed personal contact is the most important. You see eyeball to eyeball, you get to me. So we flew in and then he had a secretary. In fact, her name was Dawn Kinsley. And she brought me in and we talked. And then he said, I'll send you all the information. I said, okay. I said, and then and then prepare a business plan. And okay, so I flew back here. That was about February. And then he says, okay, he says, Willie, he says, we have a new manager that's coming out. He's going to be my boss, based in Singapore. And he'll be arriving towards Easter. And I'll talk to him. I said, but who? I'm more or less the one who can tell him what to do because I know the market. Okay, so don't worry. I said, okay, good. And then he calls me up, Willie, that's a change of plan. I said, no. The number 3 guy in Jaguar died.
Oh, God.
And the guy is on his way to Japan, was recalled. So we're back to square one. I said, oh my gosh, yeah. And it says, we'll have to wait again, and I don't know when. I said, okay. So came in June, July. Says, okay, Willie, so I have a new manager. His name is Ian Major. And he wants you to do a business plan. And we're going to fly to Manila for your presentation. I said, okay. So that was in August. And so they came in, they reserved the function room in the Shangri-La Hotel. And my slot was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They had a slot for a group at 9 o'clock in the morning, you know. So I was ready. So 2 o'clock, I did a presentation. Went every step, you know. And after 2 hours, the two of them says, what do you think? I said, I've never seen a presentation like this. I said, what? No, he says, Wellington, this is fantastic. He says, we have to continue, okay? I said, okay, so we'll wrap up. And then, yeah. While packing up, in the room was the head waiter. So he looked at me and I said, then he went and he says, boss, ang galing ng presentasyon ninyo. I said, paano mo nasasabi yan? Boss, yung kaninang umaga, wala pang 10 minuto, pinauwi. You know, these are all very candid human relations.
Yeah.
If I had behaved like an asshole, he probably didn't care. But he was so sympathetic, you know? And then he told, so, okay. And so we left it that way, and I felt confident. Then that evening, I was tracking my rack stores. I told them the business I was in. So I called one of the managers in Pasay Road. I said, oh, kumusta? There was no cell phone then, so radio. That's how I manage my stores. Every night, I tracked sales. We had no POS and all. Then, sir, there are 2 guests here that are asking for you. I said, they're foreigners. Oh, I said, okay. Talk to them, yeah. So these are the 2 guys from Jaguar.
Yeah.
They wanted to see what Racks was all about. And they said, it's amazing, this food. How can you? And you're not even a chef, you know. And I said, yeah. Okay, then we'll catch up with you. And then the next day, they were on the flying out. My friend calls me up. He says, Willie, Ian has a bad stomach. And I said, oh no. Are you serious? And he said, no, we're just pulling your leg. We had a great visit. And the rest was history. And then, so they said, we'll make the recommendations. And then you have to come to Castle Bromwich to visit the factory, tour the factory. And we'll do this sometime in September. I said, okay, so fine. And so I planned out. I organized the whole family. This was in 1996. So I brought the whole family. Maureen, Mark, Jason, Luel, went to London. And they said, what's this for? I said, no, just take a look, you know, we're going to... I said,
None of them knew.
They had no clue.
Yeah.
They had no clue. And then I said, tomorrow, Monday morning, everybody has to be up at 9 o'clock. We're going to take a train at 9 o'clock. And, okay, and so we took a train and got to, I'm just recalling where that part is, in London by train. And there was a signage, and I was telling them, "Will you all stand under?" Teenagers, they were. Would you guys all align? What's this for? And I was telling them,
And
"Damn
they were
you!"
high school during that.
Yeah, I said, if you only know, you know. And so they were lining up, and then we asked somebody, "Sir, could you please take our picture?" Took our picture. There were no cell phones there. So we got out. Then we got out of the train station, and then there was a Daimler that was waiting for us. And Mark says, "Pops, that's a Daimler." Wow. I said, "Yeah, we're riding that car." "Come on." I said, "Mr. Soong, yes, please come in." So we ride in the car, the whole family, and we're driving. And then we see the Jaguar sign. I said, "Pops," he said, "Yes, you're talking to the distributor of Jaguar cars."
Wow. Wow.
And first thing Mark goes, "Fuck."
Why can I imagine that in my head?
And that's the beauty of all the surprises I've done for them.
Yeah.
Ferrari must have, nobody knows what I'm doing.
And what I'm amazed at with his story is it starts with him seeing a car.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anyone else who would think there's something about this. I need to be the distributor.
Yeah.
How does that happen in your head?
Gut feel, instinct. And of course, if it says that you need 1 billion pesos, nice knowing you, I'm off somewhere else, you see. And again, it's opportunities, it's a gut feel, and it's something I like.
Right. So as you're telling this story, I'm thinking of the door is open and you have to walk through. And so many people just don't walk through. They think, how am I going to do that? I don't know how to have a business. I don't have the money. What is running in your head when you think of it as, I want to do it?
It's the integrity of purpose.
Oh, say more.
It's the integrity of purpose and commitment. That's why if there's anything that I can be modestly very proud of, it's always the integrity of my transaction and relation and representation. I'll never bullshit anyone, you know, unless you're drunk. And you'll call a guy, "You look so beautiful." You know, it's so that you don't veer away from that, you see.
Yeah.
And Tito, for me, it's even before that, just the is it courage? I don't even have the right words for you to think, I like this car. It's been on my mind since yesterday. I happen to be in Hong Kong, and I think I want to be the distributor in the Philippines.
It was telling me, why is this happening? And today, at this stage of my life in the 80s, being 80s now, I am of a very firm conviction. There is no such thing as a coincidence in life.
Okay.
And everything that happens for a reason with a purpose, that is where that's non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
And when I look back, everything, even the problems I've gone through,
Yeah.
there was a purpose. It was never a smooth ride. In fact, I'll share this with you. From 1997, when we were hit by the Asian crisis, till 2022, 25 years, I mean, that was the most difficult financial chapter of my life. 25 solid years. Although I launched great brands, but nobody knew. I was always swimming in so much financial pressure, meeting debts, but I have met all my obligations. I've gone through Dacion and Pago and all of that. In fact, we had one transaction, I think that was 2006, and I owed 4 banks. And no, first there was one bank, and I told them, I said, they said, "Willy, you can give us 7 years. We'll give you 7 years." I said, "I have no cash flow. I cannot even pay these debts. And I'm willing to give up my Manila Golf share." "Really?" I said, "Yes." So he brought it to the board. We brought it to the board. You know what the board said? For Willy Soong, who's a golfer, to give up a Manila golf share, which is a crown jewel,
Yeah.
we have to help him out. We have to accept his offer. They accepted that as 14 million pesos. Manila Golf is 250 million today.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
I have no regrets. That was the quagmire I was in.
And the financial crisis, this is when you said overnight, the debts just doubled, tripled.
We had committed purchases from foreign suppliers that was amounting to $10 million. The funding budget was 2650, so 265 million. Overnight, I was in Italy. I was taking delivery of a yacht for a client. Get the message, the peso was 47.50.
Just like that.
Yeah. So overnight, we needed 475 million. You don't pick that up
Yeah.
from any bank balance.
Yeah.
And that was the start of all the financial grief. And yet, I got Ferrari, it was offered to me. And one of the statements of the Ferrari people was, after I did the presentation, the guy said, you know, Wellington, if you can sell a Jaguar, you can sell any car. And I said, that's the highest compliment we can give you. Because that's in the motor trade industry. It was one of the most difficult brands to sell. And I was successful. We launched Ferrari, Maserati, Aston Martin. And it's so gratifying because from my humble beginnings of 50 pesos, I never walked up to a principal saying, this is my bank credentials. It's purely on the integrity of our intention and our focus.
Yeah.
And today I enjoy that special privilege. People come knocking on my door.
Yeah.
They offer so many opportunities, and it's not because of who we are, but what we are. And when I give my commitment, we'll work on a project, I don't waver. See,
So despite the financial crisis, you just kept going.
I had no choice. I had no choice. I mean, we were belly up all the time, you know, and I've always said this, I've told this to Rico, he's you know, how do you describe your period during the 97 crisis? And it's, I was eating broken glass for breakfast every day.
Oh.
Gosh.
Every day. And I will never forget it, but it made me a stronger person.
Yeah.
I never had to compromise my financial integrity, had to see through. And yet there were times we had to turn down a sale. I'll tell my people, there is dignity in saying no. You see?
Yeah. And you're saying you had no choice, and yet we heard during the financial crisis, a lot of people gave up. We heard suicidal cases and all of that.
Yeah, that was bad.
What were you thinking when you say there's no choice but to just keep going?
I couldn't give up. I just could not give up because I believe that all of these difficulties had a purpose. And I will be rewarded in the end, but I have to pay the price. It wasn't a walk in the park.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way of thinking about it, is that there's a purpose and there's a reward at the end.
Yeah.
Yes,
Keep
and the
going.
reward is not necessarily money in the bank. It's the success of that achievement.
The fulfillment.
Yes, and today, look back, I mean, friends in the motoring industry, you know, it's so flattering. They say, Tito Willy, you have nothing to prove. You were the only one who brought in all these cars. You changed the entire automotive landscape.
Yeah.
You brought so much drama and excitement with the brands. Everybody was just energized, you know.
Yeah.
And no one can replace that.
Yeah.
And then they were saying, that's just like the way you brought in racks in 1993. Everybody. And today, racks is perceived as a multi-generational experience. I meet young couples, 45, Tito, when we were 8, 9 years old, every Sunday we'd tell our dad we want to go to Rocks. And then Tito, when he was courting me, he would also bring me to Rocks, you know. So it's an attachment that
Yeah.
that's my legacy.
And that's the reward that you got
Yes.
from all those years.
Yes, it's not money. You know, it's so intangible. But I can walk with a great degree of modesty and yet dignity. You see, and I can face anyone face to face. When I got out of the crisis, settled everything with the banks without even an iota of questioning. So when we did the Manila Golf, the Sion, we had a property in Canlubang, and I had 4 debts with the banks. So what I did was, I spoke to the banks, would you be willing to divide the 5 hectares amongst yourself? And they all agreed, because they knew if I'm, you know, willing. So they divided it, so everybody was happy. And would you believe, 4 months later, I was able to package the whole 5 hectares and sold it to a client,
Wow.
and they all got paid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then one day I met this friend who was a banker in the golf course, and then Willy says, come here. I said, you know, you're really something else. I said, what did I do again?
Yeah.
He says, you know, all the bankers are talking about you. I said, what did I do? No. You know, when a debtor defaults in a bank loan, that's the start of the bitterness and hatred.
Yeah.
Okay? The banks look at him as, you ran away, you defaulted, never paid your debts. Okay? And from the depositor, you guys never gave me a chance. You foreclosed, and look at me, who I'm down and out. And so you made the Sion, you gave all the properties, the banks got it. 5 months later, you package it and sold the property for them. They all got paid.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The bank says, nobody does that.
Yeah.
I said, I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, you're exceptional.
Yeah.
And these are conversations verbatim that I will never forget.
Yeah. You know, listening to your stories from the different, I guess, eras of your life, what really stands out to me is how you're able to achieve things is from the relationships that you have with people, the reputation of your name, and just pure gut instinct that have taken you this far through the 65 years of doing this.
You know, Jinno, in fact, friends with, because I've managed to have a very pleasant demeanor. I always look happy.
Yes.
You know, nobody knew how difficult it was. I kept it to myself. My health was never compromised, you know.
Yeah.
My wife, my late wife, Maureen, stuck it out with me through. She never questioned my decisions. She was just there to support. She will never question, why did I do this? Why did I? And if you know, and she saw me through all of these periods, you see.
Yeah.
And where do you think you got the tenacity and that drive?
It evolves within yourself. It's you know, it's what you go through in life, and there is no script to that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the circumstances that one is exposed to. And when you go through all of this, it molds your character, your personality, your soul, your outlook. And for me, there's one mantra. There's no such thing as giving up, but knowing when to exit.
Right. Right.
You know, I actually, because you mentioned some words that I kept on hearing over and over again. And I asked your children, about about lessons that they learned from you through the years. And if I could read some of them out, I asked four of them, the four of them. This is from Jason. And he said this, and you said the word so many times in the past hour. Jason said, integrity, integrity, integrity. Always heard him saying this growing up, but it's something I understood more as I got older. And that's a word that you probably repeated about maybe minimum 30 times since we sat down.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is from Lou. Luel said, years ago when I was working for my dad and complaining about something that was really annoying and frustrating, I don't remember what it was, but his response to me basically rewired my brain and changed the way I dealt with things. He told me, you can't complain about something without offering some kind of solution. You remember saying that to her?
No, because for me, when you're forced into a situation, you really don't complain. You have to find a solution to get your way out of it.
Yeah.
So these are nuggets from Willy Soong.
Yeah.
Aside from pulling out a 45.
This one is from Mark. I remember a lesson taught from generation to generation. End of the day, all you have is your name. You must take care of it. I always remember my father emphasizing this. For instance, growing up, I worked with my dad. I have made mistakes, and my dad supported me still, even if it was wrong, because I already committed. And he actually gave me an example of that, where I guess he gave a wrong price for a vehicle that he was trying to sell. He came to you, said, I made a mistake, and you said, we need to support you.
You have to honor it.
Yeah,
Wow.
you have to honor it.
I cannot disown my people. But what we do after that, that's something else.
This one is from Angelica. And she said, my dad taught me two big things. Never settle, and there's always a way forward. Those lessons have stuck with me. They've helped me hold out for what I really want, whether it's in relationships, work, or chasing my dreams. And have reminded me that even when things feel stuck, there's always a path to keep going.
Wow.
I didn't even realize that these things that you're quoting stuck with them through the years. I am getting emotional about it, you know.
Yeah. How does it feel to hear these words from your children?
I mean, I will never remember these things, but somehow it's a gratifying affirmation that they did not reject or resent. And they were learning from me by example.
Yeah.
It's not by dictating to them,
Yeah.
you see. So they're at a crisis or they're at a crossroad, and if they reach out to me, it's always, you have to find a way. Today, I'm just dealing with a nightmare of a challenge,
Yeah.
candidly. But
And yet you're here with us, you're laughing, you're telling us your life stories.
yeah, I'm navigating it because I'm using 3 legal teams to help me find a solution. They're giving me opinions, interpretation. I still have to make the decision.
Yeah.
But I have to make the decision within the legal parameters of what they've taken note of. And that's fine. But I enjoy that kind of banter. It's I call it there are many things. I call it intellectual acrobatics, emotional acrobatics, and verbal acrobatics.
Yeah.
You see, using the right words, the semantics. That's part of the managing the psyche of a conversational relationship. You see.
So, Tito, throughout all the ups and downs the past 65 years, how would you describe yourself now?
I'm at peace with myself. I'm grateful. Health-wise, my health ledger is 100%. My doctor just say, whatever you're doing, just keep at it. It's good health is nothing to brag about. It's a blessing.
Sure.
And I'm grateful for it. moving forward through life, it's always tempering, moderation. I can eat anything, I can drink anything, but it's always in moderation, you see. And even your ambitions have to be in moderation. You cannot just be intoxicated with so many ambitions, then you lose the objective perspective of navigating it because you're so intoxicated with that greed, you see. So I'm very grateful at this stage of my life. I've no great ambitions to achieve, but except to succeed every day, step by step. Once it's not overnight. What we're dealing with today is a result of 4 years of investments, and it's all coming together. I have new projects that are very, very challenging, and I've never been so excited in my life.
So challenges excite you. Maybe that's another secret.
Yes, challenges, and of course the difficulties that go with it, but the difficulties are manageable. Sometimes the difficulties are because you underestimated, or the difficulties are presented by the other side of the party. You know, it's political and all. So you provided your intention, the integrity of your intention is transparent, they'll have a hard time to put you down.
Tito, you talked about never giving up and yet knowing when to exit. Could you talk more about that?
Okay. You never give up when you commit to something. And because that's the only thing that's gonna drive you and encourage you to survive and overcome the obstacles you have. But that's based on a clear conviction that you still know what is ahead and you're prepared for these obstacles. Now, knowing when to exit is when you come to the realization that the time is up, you want to move on to something else. And knowing when to exit is exiting with dignity. Than to be forced to exit. Then when you're forced to exit, it's a failure. When you know when to exit, it is a choice. And that's where
Great distinction. Yeah.
and that's where I find so much psychic comfort that I'm able to choose my engagements. That's why I never say I'll choose my battles. I choose my engagements, and even choosing an engagement may at some point prove to be wrong, to be not worth it, that I have to have the humility to say it's time to exit, than to be a failure.
Give us an example of something in your life that you've had to exit and how you got to that conclusion that it was time.
It was a bank robbery. I had to exit. No, we did ventures. We set up companies in Singapore. That was in 1981 to 83, 84, because part of the systems furniture was an opportunity in Singapore. And we were ahead of the game. In fact, this is a fact. I was interviewing a candidate from Indonesia through a headhunter and talking to him. And then from Indonesia, I was talking to him as a Singaporean company because we registered a company there. But he looked at me as a Filipino, so he didn't seem to like the idea that he was going to be hired by a Filipino, and that's fine, but we were just discussing exploratory. We were setting up two companies, the Electro Systems and the Systems Furniture. In fact, we successfully secured the supply of the Systems Furniture of the entire NOL building in Singapore in 1982, 83, and I was doing the Palace project in Brunei. So this man said, he says, that, then he said, I come from we're in the flower business, and maybe our principal. I said, who's your, or Lim Shio Long. I didn't know who Lim Shio Long was. And then he says, oh, by the way, our chairman just hired a Filipino expat to join his company based in Singapore. And he's heading the First Pacific. That was Manny Pangilinan.
Oh, wow.
So here I am, I'm trying to hire an Indonesian, and he's bragging to me that his boss just hired a Filipino
Who turned out to be MVP.
MVP. And I never heard of the name of Lim Shio Long, you know. And the rest is history. Now, we set up a company there. The biggest difficulty, again, was managing the integrity of the expectations of the staff. We were paying them, but they were sidelining. They were doing sidelines. You know, I just said, I cannot be that stubborn. I cannot divide myself and try to put out. Because at that time, we had the momentum of the Brunei project. So we had the opportunity to, and Singapore was booming. But the managers we hired were doing sidelines. And I just said, I had to close up. You see. And there was even one, I gave him an insight into the business. He got into the business himself and competed against me. That is the betrayal of trust.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I am very, very sensitive. It is so painful, and we all have experienced that, the betrayal of trust. And that for me is the most painful form of one person to experience, the betrayal of trust.
And I think because the way you've done it through the years is because of the personal relationships that you have and the way you're with integrity.
Right.
When something that drastic happens, that's the complete opposite of it.
Yes,
It really stings.
yes,
Right.
yes, you see.
So it's the complete opposite of what you would do.
Yes. So that's when you know when to exit, not because of failure. But we've had many failures. We've had more failures than successes, you know. But it happens, and that's what, as the tree, you know, it's the layers of aging that makes the character of a person.
Yeah. You know, there's something that Sheila actually said that stuck to me through the years. And she said, her quote was, "There's no such thing as failure, only feedback."
True.
Yeah.
True.
So every time if there is a failure, you just learn from it and then
And
you
move on.
Move on.
You move on. Yeah. It's how you learn from that failure.
Yeah.
So when you commit the same mistake twice,
Yeah.
I mean, it has something to do with IQ.
And like you said, there's purpose in everything.
Yes.
So whatever I learned from this, I could use later on, right?
Yes. We do not necessarily remember everything, but it is the subjective influences of this experience that guides your subconscious. That's why instinct means a lot.
Yeah.
You see, even meeting people, you know, and that's been the ledger I've had with all the principals I've dealt with. Some were good and some were just
Yeah.
completely disappointments.
I want to ask you because I know we're about to wrap things up, but because you really, I guess, you want to connect with people all the time, and the way you do things is a very personal way to do it. Do you know instantly when you meet somebody if that person is somebody that you could work with, or if that's somebody that's you know, a good person or a bad person? Do you know instantly? Are there cues? Are there signs?
Well, I'll have to admit that science or that instinct is never foolproof.
Yeah.
You will still make your mistakes. And that's a result of a very skillful misrepresentation by the other party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's the trusting side of you accepting it on the face value of its representation.
Right.
So the whole process has to go through a subliminal revalidation from statements, from mannerisms, representations, and then that's when you strengthen the relationship as something that is solid, or it's just gonna fail.
Or if it's something you should exit.
Yes.
But speaking of which, I mean, you do have this book, which it's been published. We know the background of the book already, but it's been published. But I think that it's something that you should definitely put out there some more. I know you give it away to friends and to people who you want to give it to, but I do believe the stories in here are stuff that I guess everybody could learn from.
Thank you so much, Jinno and Sheila. I mean, I'm grateful for those very kind words, and they're definitely not patronizing words. They're very sincere statements, and I think what I'm now working on is just the timing of when I would be ready to
distribute it.
Yes, to launch the book. Because I don't want to, I'm not a writer. I don't want to tell you know who I am, you know. But there have been so many underlying influences really suggesting it. So the timing is arriving.
It's a sign. You love looking at things at signs, right?
Yes,
it's a sign.
Yes. And I will just read to you a message from a friend who got the book. He says, Manong, I woke up at 4 a.m. and as I could not go back to sleep, I started living through your book. Wow, you could be a business columnist. I love the way you got back to the Jaguar and the Singaporean SOBs. This friend knows me well enough. And then I replied was, Manong, coming from you is the highest compliment ever, spoken from my heart. And again, he's the one telling me, and he has not read the book. He says, oh, when are you going to release? I said, timing lang. Hindi, dapat i-release. Then he read the book. Now he's saying that I could be a business columnist, which is very flattering.
Maybe that's the next step. That's the next era.
This is the sign.
But we know you're very busy, and we know that there's people waiting for you that need your approval for something. But it truly is an honor to sit here with you and listen to your story. I've known you for quite some time now.
Yes, we are family.
This is the first time that I'm probably communicating with you this way, so I very, very much appreciate it.
I am very, very grateful for this gratifying exchange. You have given me a new platform to tell my story, and with you being the people behind this initiative, I cannot describe how grateful I am, because we'll see how your audience will react to this, and will lead us to the next chapter.
Thank you so much for saying yes, and your story is going to influence so many lives.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for everybody out there for watching and listening to another episode of Driven, the Road to Peak Performance. Of course, you can follow us on our social media platforms, and email address should be there as well in the graphics. Till next time.